Welcome back to Farmtastic CSA Cooking. My name is Tony, and I'll be your host and tour guide as we travel some of New Jersey's certified organic farms, gathering the ingredients of the season and bringing them to our friend Chef Kim of Jammin Crepes in Princeton, New Jersey.
So hello, my name is Matt. This is Cherry Grove Organic Farm. We're located in Princeton, New Jersey. Our 20th season here on the farm. We lease the land, grow about 18 acres of mixed certified vegetables, flowers, and herbs. A little bit of everything, not too much of any one thing. I view it as sort of your typical diversified small farm. We do 3 farmers markets and a CSA program here at the farm. Our first 15 years, I've lost track of when we switched. 12, 15 years we did your really typical CSA. We didn't box stuff up, but we told you what to take. You know, you would take 5 pounds of tomatoes, 1 bunch of carrots, 4 heads of lettuce, right down the list. And about 8 years ago, we switched to market CSA. We call it the barn CSA. And so we just set it up like a market, a farm market, like we do all our other markets. And you just come in and you pick what you want. You can spend $500 on tomatoes if you'd like. Sort of the beauty of it is if you don't like kohlrabi, you don't ever have to deal with kohlrabi. You can really sort of focus in on what you want, which is nice. The other thing I think is really nice with this system is it's very flexible. You know, if you are on vacation, if you can't make it, you really don't lose anything. Your count stays the same. You don't have to come that particular week. We're open Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 7. So some of our members come both days, some just come one day, some come once a month. You know, it's very flexible, which we found was really sort of key in everybody's hectic life. It just made our lives, and I think the members' lives, a lot easier.
Welcome back. Today we are going to be focusing on tomato, the Jersey tomato, and tomato-tastic cooking. We had a wonderful shopping experience earlier at Matt Conover's Cherry Grove Organic Farm. And wow, the tomatoes are beautiful. And we've chosen a nice assortment of different varieties of tomatoes and some fresh herbs to complement them. And we're going to make some really delicious, simple things and a couple things that you'll be able to enjoy, for many months to come as well, a way to preserve the tomatoes. So let me just show you a few things that we found in our bag here from the farm. This is an early girl variety of tomato that we chose specifically for our oven-dried tomatoes because it has a slightly firmer flesh, fewer seeds, not as juicy as some of the other tomatoes. So it'll slice really nicely, has great flavor, and it's going to be terrific for our oven dries. So we've got our early girls, and we also have some beautiful varieties of heirloom tomatoes, which are nice and juicy and so fragrant. And we're going to make a really delicious kind of Spanish version of bruschetta, a pan con tomate with these because they have so much flavor, juicy, and just perfect for this type of preparation. And I know you're going to love it. It doubles as kind of a nice side for an entree or a nice little appetizer. So that's a brandy wine heirloom. And then we also found some really nice German striped, a nice variety of heirloom as well. Those heirloom varieties are, have distinctive with all of their kind of craggy surfaces. And they are so delicious and fragrant and just wonderful to enjoy fresh. They also make a great sauce too. We're going to use some of these in our sauce that we'll be making as well. We're going to make something that kind of pairs the seasons because we're kind of the very, very late summer into early autumn. So we have some winter squash already. This is a delicata squash. And what's really nice about it is that the skin is edible on this squash. It's a really nice transitional season squash. So we're going to make a delicata squash and tomato stew, so to speak, but it's really like a sauce. It'd be really nice. We're going to season it with onions and garlic and curry, some curry powder, and that wonderful kind of warmth of the traditional seasonings in the curry are just so perfect, a perfect pairing of the squash and the tomatoes together. So that's going to be really great. We have lots of great garlic that's coming out of the farm as well. Wonderful local garlic. We have great local onions that we'll be putting in our sauce too. And wonderful fresh thyme. And this thyme is so nice. It is actually flowering right now from the fields. So that makes it extra fragrant. You can see those little purple flowers on the thyme. And oh boy, is that great. And we're going to mince that up coarsely and mix it in with our early girl tomatoes as a seasoning for those oven-dried tomatoes, which is going to be great. And of course, fresh basil. We couldn't have tomatoes this time of year without fresh basil. And this is just going to be a really nice accent on our pan con tomate. So we're going to have some fun today in the kitchen, and I'm so glad that you joined us again. One other thing I want to point out, we're going to highlight local bakery and baker, Lily Pie's Bakery, making some wonderful breads. This is the type of bread. We've got a focaccia bread and a white sourdough country bread that have a really nice kind of coarse crumb inside to them, the type of crumb you'll see when we get to the recipe that you'll want for the pan con tomate recipe. So make sure you get a nice local bread for your pan con tomate recipe. Okay? All right, so we're going to get going on our oven-dried tomatoes. And the nice thing is that right now, this time of year, we have this beautiful fresh thyme that is flowering. So it's super fragrant. If you can use this recipe, and you know what, this is a little coarser than usual, the stem. So you know what we're going to do, which is a really nice thing, is we're just going to strip. We're going to strip the leaves right off of the stems here, because I don't like to really put the stems on here when they're as fibrous as this. It's lovely, lovely fresh thyme that is so fragrant. But we're going to strip them off. So you just grab your individual stems here and hold it at the top and just gently pull down like this, right? And then you could save the stems if you want to throw in your stock, your vegetable stock, which would be really yummy. But I really just want these beautiful fresh leaves and flowers from the thyme to season the oven-dried tomatoes. Now, if you did not have fresh thyme, this recipe works really well with dried thyme as well. Or you might actually make some of your own dried thyme in season right now when we have all of this. And all you need to do that is to hang your kind of bundles of herbs upside down, or you could strip your leaves off and put them out on a just kind of a plate or a platter and just let them air dry. That's all you really want to do, is just kind of get the moisture all out of them. 1/3 of a cup of the fresh thyme leaves for this recipe. If you're using dried, which tend to be a little bit more flavorful, pungent, you might want to use about 1/4 cup. And then we have some brown sugar that we're going to use as a seasoning as well. We'll want 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and we will have the recipe posted for you as well. These quantities are for 5 pounds of tomatoes. We're using our early girl tomatoes. You can use another similar kind of paste or sauce type tomato that you like as well for this. You can actually even use cherry tomatoes if you like. I've done that before. It's quite nice. Just cut them right in half, the cherry tomatoes, and use the same seasoning and oven dry technique. Okay, so it looks like we have about 1/3 of our leaves kind of prepped here. And we have lots more time left, so we might take the time to dry that thyme later on. So we'll have more. I'm going to mix that in with my 1/4 cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of coarse salt or like a kosher salt. We use either that or canning salt, but what you want to do is use a pure clean salt. And 2.5 teaspoons of black pepper. I'm just getting a few more stems out here. We'll mix that all together. And then of course, the most important ingredient, I'm gonna set that aside, that's just our seasoning. Don't wanna miss any of these leaves, so I'm gonna throw a few more in there, right? And the most important thing are our tomatoes. So as we mentioned, we're gonna use this nice early girl variety, and we're gonna slice them. I'm gonna get my the knife I was using, excuse me, my serrated knife, which ran away, excuse me. Okay, here we go, we're back. We got the serrated knife, which you know, a really nice sharp serrated knife I find is the best tool for cutting through a tomato. Even these are a nice firm flesh tomato, but it's really, you want to keep the shape when you're doing something like this. So we're just doing, the size of these is I'm cutting them in half, and then I am quartering the halves for these oven-dried tomatoes. And the recipe that we have is for 5 pounds. You'll see what happens when you oven dry these. They shrivel up nicely, but they'll still have some texture and dynamite flavor. And they're gonna keep for a really long time once you've done that. You can, a couple of ways, you can cover them, put them in a jar and cover them with olive oil and keep them in the fridge or on your counter. Or I like to make little bags actually and freeze them if I'm going to keep them for a very long time. They're delicious as a topping for pizza or in crepes. That's what we do at Jammin Crepes. We actually have one of our popular savory crepes is an oven-dried tomato white pizza. So you want to use a really nice ricotta cheese in that, oven-dried tomatoes, maybe a little mozzarella. We put a little pesto in there as well. Fulper Farms Dairy, one of our local cheesemakers, makes a really nice, delicious fresh ricotta. So, okay, so we get all of our tomatoes together, sliced up like this in our bowl, and we're gonna sprinkle with our seasonings. And I think I have more seasonings than I'm gonna need for the amount of tomatoes I have here. So I didn't quite do 5 pounds here. And then we're gonna toss them in to coat. Got these coated in these herbs and seasonings. And we're gonna grab a sheet pan that we've just lined with some parchment. And we do that because, you know, they will pull off of this. Once they're dried, you'll see they caramelize on here with the natural sugars and of course the brown sugar that we put on here. And so you want, the parchment paper makes it a little bit easier to kind of pull them off and have these nice little nuggets of delicious oven-dried tomato. So you would use these any other way. I'm sure you've enjoyed imported Italian sun-dried tomatoes in a salad with some goat cheese. And well, you don't have to get imported. It's even better to get the local and make your own oven dries, right? They are super delicious and so easy to make. So we get that going. You see all that delicious juice. And these are sweet, yummy tomatoes. Once we have them in the oven for 2.5 to 3 hours, we're going to have this super concentrated tomato flavor. That's what happens, the beauty of it. You kind of pull out all that moisture, but you're concentrating all of that flavor right in the tomato. So we're going to pop these in the oven for 2.5 to 3 hours, just until they get to the desired texture for you. Some people like them, you know, drier than, sometimes they can be kind of more crunchy, chewy, or you might like them really soft. So 2.5 to 3 hours, but check them and see. And we're going to put these in the oven now. We're going to move on to a sauce, and then we'll go back and see how they're doing a little later. Okay?
We grow about, this field's maybe an acre and a half, 2 acres of tomatoes. Heirloom, we call them standard tomatoes. Early Girl, Mountain Magic, and Estiva are our 3 varieties we found. You know, a lot of times with standard tomatoes, they're a stronger plant, but they don't taste very, very good. But we found these 3 varieties that actually have really good flavor. I actually prefer them to heirloom myself. If the general public didn't want heirloom so much, I wouldn't grow an heirloom ever again. If we pan a little, you can see the difference between heirloom tomatoes and tomatoes with a little stronger growing habit. How many years, Luis? ¿Cuántos años? 8 years. 8 años, 8 years, Luis. Olegario is his first year as Belisario's brother. We were short-staffed this year, and so Belisario has been with me. ¿Cuántos años, Beli? 10? 11? 13, 13 years Belly's been here. Jimmy, my assistant manager on the ATV, has been with me 4 years, and Rich in the front is one of our classic first-year interns. Still smiling on August 31st, so.
So back in the kitchen now, we are going to skip over to a wonderful recipe that combines the late summer tomatoes, our tomatoes, with some nice delicata squash. If you don't have delicata squash, you could use a butternut squash. You just want to peel it then. The beauty of the delicata squash is that it has a nice thin skin, so you can leave it on, which is terrific. And it also has a really nice nutty flavor. And the combination of these two, the tomatoes and the squash, makes for a wonderful kind of late summer, early autumn flavor and a great sauce, quick sauce with these gorgeous tomatoes. So we're going to move over to the stove. We have some olive oil. That's kind of going to be our first ingredient to get going. We're going to saute some of these nice crescent sliced fresh onions from the farm because onions are plentiful right now. So we'll get our heat going. We're going to saute our onions. We have some gorgeous, so much wonderful garlic that's coming out of the fields right now. We are over at the farmers market today at Cherry Grove Organic Market. So we've got lots of fresh garlic, and we're going to add that in with our onions. And we will have the recipe for you with the quantities as well, so you'll be able to make this at home. So we'll get this going in here. Just 2 large cloves of garlic minced up with those onions. Keep going up here. Okay, great. And I'm going to get a nice spoon to kind of get these things going. The flavor that we put in here for our seasonings in this sauce is a curry. We love those warm flavors of the curry. And there's one brand that we particularly like to use. We're not, so into making it from scratch ourselves because we really like this one kind of Madras Sun brand curry powder. We find is a really nice blend, very balanced for this particular sauce. So that's what we like to use. Okay, as soon as we get a little bit of heat going in here, the one important thing when you're cooking with a curry powder, we find is you want to toast it kind of in the skillet, either dry or with the oil in this case. So that really helps to kind of bring out the flavors, really kind of blossom those herbs and spices that make a curry, just like turmeric and cumin and coriander, vinaigrette, all kinds of delicious. And you don't overdo it with this. That was 2 tablespoons that we're putting in, but we're putting it in here now and getting it mixed in with the onions and the garlic. Okay, get that going. And our next ingredient is going to be our delicata squash that we've just, so easy to cut this squash. We have, just cut it in half, stem to blossom end, and just used a spoon to scrape out the seeds that are in there. Turned it on flat side down and just cut it into little crescent rounds. And they're going to cook really nice and quickly. I mean, this will simmer a little bit. You'll see in the tomatoes and the stock we're going to put in there. I'm getting some nice, you can smell that and hear it. People are going to be like, wow, what are you cooking in your kitchen when you're doing this, right? Good stuff. Might want to get this going on one of those days when we're just starting to kind of get a cool, crisp air. When it's feeling a little cooler, this is a wonderful sauce to make. And it's great, great over pasta. Do that. Or it's also delicious, just kind of served over a grain as well. And it's a really nice vegetarian entree. You can see the color already picking up in the delicata, which is beautiful. You can see the green in the ribs, which will be so pretty in the finished sauce. I just want to kind of get the flavors married into the squash with some good heat. There we go. Okay. And our next ingredient is going to be our tomatoes. We have all these great tomatoes, and we did a nice medley of tomatoes for this. We have some of our early girls in here. We have some of our heirlooms. So we've got some nice juicy tomatoes, some firmer tomatoes. We're going to have some really great tomato flavor in this sauce. Okay, so we got all these tomatoes in here. Awesome. So great. Okay. Okay. So we're going to stir this around. I love the colors in here too. The tomato and the, that curry powder also, it's the flavor, but it also brings out that golden color in the squash, which is super complimentary. And our tomatoes are just going to start to melt. You'll see, it's so nice. And just create this wonderful sauce. Okay, so we've got all of that in there. And the only other thing we need to add to this, and then we'll bring it up to a simmer, is some stock. So we have some nice homemade vegetable stock from the Jammin Crepes kitchen. Something that we do almost every day, making a good stock with our leftover trimmings. Okay, so we're going to set that aside and we're going to bring it up to a simmer. We're going to cover it and probably let it simmer until tomatoes really just start to melt and that our delicata squash becomes tender. You want to have nice texture in this so that the tomatoes will turn into a sauce, but you'll still have that kind of nice bite and texture of the squash. It's going to be good. I'm going to add a little, add a little seasoning to this. Secret is that we already had a little salt in here because we always, in our kitchen, salt our garlic when we're mincing it. So we've got a little pre-seasoning in there. We're going to do some salt and pepper. Make sure we pull up all the flavors in here. And it has a really nice, rich taste to it when it's finished. Okay, we're going to put the cover on this, and then we're going to move over back to the table in a minute and finish up with our third and super delicious recipe of a pan con tomate. That's next.
So this is our last stuff to plant, seedling-wise. We'll direct seed radishes up till the end of September, and I've got, as I said earlier, carrots, right? All the fall stuff to still go in. But this is spinach. There's Swiss chard, there's bok choy, which we've never done before, but we'll try. And cabbage, broccoli, and kale are sort of the main ones. I mean, there's a thing of basil, but it's too late for that. We're starting to see basil downy mildew anyway. Some parsley we'll throw in. So sort of this is it. This is the last stuff to plant if we ever can do it. As I said earlier, we're late on everything, but we always are. So I'm not too worried about it. It'll either be ready or it won't. We're gonna tomorrow during the storm, we're gonna pot on all the broccoli and stuff. So I feel like that gives you, a couple weeks leeway. At least it's growing, and then we'll plant it as soon as we can. But it'll be nice, like once this goes in, then and everything's seeded, then like that's just out of the way. It makes you feel a little better. I just like to get it done.
Awesome. So this is our final, but fabulous final tomato recipe for our CSA Cooking with Tomatoes segment, featuring Cherry Grove Organic Farm's gorgeous tomatoes and everything else they have on their farm. And thanks for joining us again for this NOFA cooking series. We really appreciate your support. So we have this great focaccia bread here from Jen Carson's Lily Pies Bakery right here in Princeton. And, I sent Jen a message the other day and I said, we really want to make a pan con tomate with a great bread. And she said, oh, this focaccia, or it could be the sourdough country white, which I know is going to be gorgeous too. But we're going to do this one for you. The key to it is to have a bread that has really nice open crumb. So you want that kind of open crumb in here. Because you'll see what we're going to do. We're going to toast it in the oven, and we just kind of want that rough top finish, kind of like the kind of roughness that you have on a really good English muffin when it's split, right? So let's take a look. I'm going to cut this actually horizontally. I thought that might be a nice way to do it for this particular delicious recipe. So I'm using a serrated knife and cutting horizontally across the loaf of yummy focaccia bread. And then we're going to open it up and we're going to make a nice big serving of the pan con tomate. We can do both sides actually because we have all these gorgeous tomatoes. And then it's something that, look at that, nice crumb inside, beautifully crafted bread, I have to say. When you're doing this as well, one thing to think about, because what we're taking advantage of here with the pan con tomate is all the delicious juiciness in these local summer tomatoes, and specifically our heirlooms we love for this. So you want a bread that's sturdy, right? Because it's going to hold a lot of juice. So you could even use and this is like really nice and sturdy. It's going to work really well. The top is a little bit softer, but it's going to work really well too. But the point I'm trying to make is you could use day-old bread, right? Because you'll see what happens almost with the juice from the tomatoes. It kind of reconstitutes the bread a little bit. And you want that really nice sturdy feature. You can also toast it a little bit. If you know day-old bread, it seems a little soft. Give it a little toast in the oven first. Dry it out a little bit before you go to make the pan con tomate. So here's our bread. And I'm going to put the top in the oven for a minute while we get started on the bottom. And doing it this way specifically because I think it'll be nice. We can cut serving wedges from it that way. But this is kind of like I feel like the Spanish version of the Italian bruschetta a little bit. But it's also like the best ramped up garlic bread you're ever going to have in tomato season. Okay, so let me pop this in the oven. Right back. Okay, so the key ingredient, of course, with the pan con tomate, the bread, and great bread, and great tomatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this German striped tomato that just looks absolutely perfectly like almost ready to burst. And we're going to actually grate the tomato right into a bowl. And it's really interesting. You'll see what happens. It's cool. We will have some juices that we can save later. Can you see that? And we're not worried the skins and all. We're using just a really standard box grater, the largest holes on your box grater, okay? And just go at it with your delicious ripe tomato. It's juicy. It's just, you know, just like falling right off, and it's going to be just so incredibly delicious on this bread. We have this gorgeous, now it's out of the oven, nice and toasty, and a nice rough surface and finish. And we're going to take our whole cloves of garlic. And this is the split focaccia bread from Lily Pies. They're making this gorgeous focaccia, and just rubbing with your garlic clove right over the surface, and it catches on all those kind of little nubby surfaces. And just keep doing it until you have just kind of grated away your clove of garlic right onto this bread and into the bread, into the nooks and crannies of deliciousness here. And so that's the first part of it. Now, if you happen to like anchovies, that's kind of a traditional thing to do on the pan con tomate as well. We're not going to do it today, but anchovies are really delicious on this. If you get really good Italian anchovies and mince them up finely, I would then spread them over top of, just like with a pastry brush, on top of the layer after the garlic. We're going to do 1/2 here today. Okay, so we did that entire clove on there. Yum. And now we have our pulp from the grated heirloom tomatoes. And we are going to scoop up the pulp. I don't want all of the water from it, but I want a lot of it. So we're going to scoop it up and just spoon it right on top. Oh shit, excuse me. Of the garlic layer. Okay. Okay, so we've got all of our grated heirloom tomatoes right on top of the focaccia. We're going to get a bunch of this gorgeous basil from the farm that we picked earlier today. Who doesn't love basil and tomatoes, right? This actually isn't super traditional for pan con tomate, but we go off for the traditional into whatever is available on the farm and is delicious together, right? And so this is, I think, is a wonderful complement and way to finish off this pan con tomate. Just a little chiffonade of fresh basil from the farm. I'm going to put it right on top here. Yummy, yummy, yummies. And, okay. See how crunchy and nice that is? It's almost like a fresh pizza bread. Yum. Okay. Can't wait to bite into that. So good. This makes a great kind of starter or something to serve alongside an Italian meal you might be serving, something you might like garlic bread with. You could also put some greens on top, like we had some fresh arugula you wanted to sprinkle on top, would be delicious. But it's just so good. The important ingredients, again, fresh, local, delicious country-style bread with a nice open crumb and wonderful fresh farm tomatoes. And this is one of the most, I think, the most delicious ways to enjoy these wonderful heirloom tomatoes. Right, so this is our sauce. It's gotten all nice and thickened with the tomatoes melting right in there and nice big chunks of the delicata. Nice and tender squash. And this is going to be really delicious served over a nice hot plate of pasta or over just kind of a cooked grain or something like that. Great vegetarian dish. So these are our oven-dried tomatoes. Just after 2.5 hours, we've got some really nice kind of caramelized texture. They're browning a little bit around the edges and just really delicious concentrated flavor. But they're still, you can see, they're still like It's a little soft. There's some juice in there, which is nice because, you know, if you lose it all, you lose all the flavor, right? You want the concentrated flavor, but you want some texture in there and some juice in there.